Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Fair and I'm here to present a teaching demonstration for a graduate course at Liberty University. My presentation is going to be about counseling victims of domestic abuse. The learning outcomes that we're going to discuss today are identifying different forms of domestic violence, including traits, characteristics, and signs of abuse. We're going to identify the impact and risk factors of domestic violence in relationships. We are going to identify the reasons why victims choose to stay in the abusive relationships. We're going to also describe the appropriate response to domestic violence that includes practices for follow-up care with the client. And then we're also going to identify therapy options that fit the needs of the client. So what is domestic violence and abuse? There are many explanations for domestic abuse, and especially for intimate relationships. Domestic violence and abuse involves a variety of patterns. As a client begins to look back, they will discover signs, clues, and characteristics that will help determine if the relationship was abusive. The ultimate indicator is that a relationship uses power and control to abuse their partner. The abuser's goal is to exert power over their victim to ensure that they are in control of the relationship and themselves. Sometimes a partner's controlling tactics may have appeared subtle and not very easily recognized. In fact, the partner may convince the victim that they are the one with the problem. They may try to convince the victim that their controlling tactics was a sign that they care or they only want the best for you. So the traits and characteristics and signs of the abusers are: 1, abusers will rush the relationship. Abusers will become attached to the relationship so quickly and rush through the getting to know you phases. Typically, they will try to skip through this section and avoid their victim from getting to know their past or their family, possibly even their friends, anything that's really close to them. They may use phrases such as, "Oh, I can't live without you," or "I've never felt like this before. You complete me." They may want to get married or move in together right away. They will appear emotionally dependent and possibly even needy throughout the early stages of the relationship. If the victim were to suggest about taking things slow, they may respond with suicidal threats or suggest that the victim is overreacting to their behavior. The second trait and characteristic or sign of an abuser is abusers will try to isolate their victim. Abusers will encourage the victim to distance themselves from their support system, such as their family or friends. The abuser may try to control access to the victim's phone, transportation, and social media. The abuser will try to limit as much ability that the victim has or have the victim ask for permission, such as asking them to go to the grocery store, to go stop by at a friend's house. Sometimes the abuser will go as far as stalking and tracking the mileage. The third trait is abusers are very jealous. Abusers will be very jealous to it and accuse their victim of being unfaithful with coworkers or friends. They may even forbid their victim to see other people, which goes along with isolation. The signs of jealousy can often be mistaken for romantic or protective behavior. Jealousy is often justified when the abuser becomes violent. So typically that's when the client or victim will be like, "Well, they're just jealous. That's why they hit me." That doesn't make it okay. The fourth sign is abusers will try to control the victim's finances. So the abuser will limit the victim's options, including their financial ability to leave. They may try to encourage their victim to not work at all or cause issues at their workplace. Some abusers may demand that their victim will give them their paycheck. The fifth sign is abusers are verbally and emotionally abusive. Typically, the verbal abuse will begin first before physical abuse. The verbal abuse is used to wear down the victim's self-esteem, but then abusers will also use public humiliation, name calling. They will mock them, they'll yell, blame, swear, or even use insulting gestures, whether the victim themselves are alone or in front of others. The abuser will also twist their victim's words to put blame onto them, and then also withhold affection when they can't get their own way. The sixth sign is abusers will mistreat the victim's property or animals. So the abuser may throw or break objects when they are upset. They may shove, kick, or hit animals out of anger. Or in order to get them to do what they want, oftentimes they will hurt the victim's pets or destroy their property, which is all a sign of wanting to hurt their victim. The seventh sign is abusers do not respect the victim's privacy. Abusers will call or show up at odd times of the day and check in on their victim. Victims may even justify that behavior by romancing it, by saying that the abuser will be like, oh, well, I just needed to hear your voice, or I just couldn't be away from you. And that's where the victim will, sometimes if they ask their abuser to leave, that the abuser might try to make a scene or embarrass them. The eighth sign is abusers are often addicted to drugs or alcohol. Drugs and alcohol abuse may not always be the direct cause of domestic violence, but they do go hand in hand. The abuser may blame their violent or abusive behavior on either the drugs or alcohol. The ninth sign, which is the last sign on our screen, is abusers may have a past history of violence. So a majority of the time, abusers who commit domestic violence are violent in general. A past record or history of assault, fighting, or abuse is a sign that the abuser thinks violence solves the issue. So let's talk about statistics. So here we can see on our screen is that victims presented symptoms of 3% of anxiety, 15% of depression, 4% of PTSD, 6% stress, 17% experienced other symptoms, and 55% experienced all of these symptoms. So all of these come hand in hand together. So how can domestic abuse affect the victim? What are the risks? Well, emotionally abusive relationships can truly destroy self-worth in a victim. One of the difficulties of working in this area is identifying the level of emotional and psychological abuse. It is easier during a psychological assessment to diagnose the symptoms of mental illness rather than to identify factors relating to the experience of abuse. Abuse can lead into many life-changing issues such as anxiety, depression, feelings of being alone, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, self-harm, substance abuse, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, and lack of safety. The stress from being dominated through domestic violence can lead into difficulties such as focusing on thoughts, sleeping issues, poor appetite, feelings of worthlessness, a sense of hopelessness, and sometimes suicidal thoughts, which all of this can result into a diagnosis of depression. If a client was a victim of abuse in their childhood, the process of recognizing the abuse may be different. If all the client has ever known was an abusive relationship, the abuser might have used this knowledge to make it more difficult for the victim to recognize that there was a problem. If a client experienced abuse from a previous relationship, they may have hoped that this relationship would be better or even different. However, the clients may not realize what is necessarily a healthy relationship compared to a non-abusive relationship. So if they have always known an abusive relationship, they may not understand what a healthy relationship is. So looking at this chart is a power and control wheel. A great reason a victim might find it difficult to identify their experience as abuse. There are several ways that a partner can use tactics in order to be in a power and control relationship. Typically, the victims do not recognize the abuse in their relationship because they've been exposed to a list of various means that abusers use to exert power and control. So one of them, like they show using intimidation, making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying her property, abusing pets, displaying weapons. Another one goes into using emotional abuse, putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, playing mind games, humiliating her, making her feel guilty. And this whole chart just goes into breaking down every single possibility of what these victims are being exposed to, of what is considered the power and control wheel. So we are going to watch a video of a Houston woman who shares her story about domestic violence. So give me just a moment and we will watch this video.
Before trouble started with your boyfriend, then fiance,
Yes.
how did he treat you?
I think everybody was swept off their feet when they first meet anybody, right? It was amazing. It was, again, he didn't live in the same state with me, so it was a long distance thing. And every time I got picked up at the airport, I had a little bitty gift, you know, it could be a small teddy bear all the way to some flowers. But every time, you know, we did anything, I felt like a queen. And I think because of the way I grew up, I've always made decisions all of my life, and he allowed me to relax, and he made all of the decisions. Being a single mother, I had to make decisions for both my son and him all the time. So when we were together, it was just me relaxing. Again, being in a different state, I didn't have to worry about household chores. It was just fun. It was relaxing. I felt like a queen. I felt like a princess. Everything was what you would expect when you come into a relationship.
And so, at least initially, this guy was, you said a queen. I mean, he's treating you properly. There's no sign of any issues. Yeah,
and what's funny is because we are both in the fitness industry, we both ate the same, we both worked out the same. We were both into making sure we ate right at the right time. It wasn't a struggle in that. I had nothing other than when I was in Houston and he was in his state, there was some struggles of insecurity that would he give me, but in my mind it was just like, if we were in the same city, he wouldn't have these struggles, right? He wouldn't be insecure of where I was going or what I was doing. And at the time I'm a sales rep, and so evening dinners were required for us to go out with with different people, social events, networking events, and so insecurities would step in, but I got it. Like, he was far, far away and he couldn't be the man that he wanted to be because he was in a different state. So I just made myself think that, okay, we can fix it. How do we fix it?
So your Prince Charming turned out to be anything but.
I think he was a Prince Charming on the outside, but his core was completely evil.
And in hindsight, which is always 20/20, what were the red flags? What were the issues that you were seeing with him that was an indication that this guy could become abusive?
So when we weren't together, he would always call me on FaceTime if I were at home. Whether we were talking on FaceTime or not, it was FaceTime, and we would sit and watch a movie, would breathe. Again, thinking that if we were dating, we'd be in the same room. He would constantly call me. But I was just thinking, oh my God, he loves me. He's going to call me all the time. He's
constant
constantly
attention.
Yeah, just a ton of attention.
Always wanting to know where you were?
Yes.
And that never bothers you?
No, and again, I played it off that that was his insecurities, and so for me to help him with his insecurities and for him to gain the trust within our relationship, I gave it to him. I answered the phone when it was appropriate. I texted him back when it was appropriate. I sat on FaceTime with him. Everybody has their insecurities, and I played into his.
What traps do you now see that you would tell women to avoid?
Listen to your gut, especially women. We are all given an intuition, and the intuition's called from whomever your higher power is, your Lord, your God, your Buddha, whoever that is, right? Women are given intuitions for reasons, and follow that. Follow that, because all of the calls that you're given, all the text message and the attention you're probably wanting and needing and getting are some signs that I didn't even see. I mean, eventually I woke up to a small, very, very small room with cameras watching me 24 hours a day, and I had a tracking device in my car, and I had no idea.
So wait a minute. There were cameras in the room where you were staying with him?
Eventually all of this came up. My intuition told me to go and check his phone one night. So I checked his phone, and I opened it up, and the first app that popped up were cameras that were led to the house. So he had an app on his phone that he could see inside the house.
So he was checking on you?
I would say yes, only because there's cameras in the house, and I'm only the only person in the house, right? And I started thinking back. I was like, well, the only time he would call me was when I was in the bathroom, and apparently there's no camera in the bathroom. So yeah, I had a tracking device put in my car because he said he wanted to change out the speaker, or change out the radio. And a tracking device was put in my car. And then I woke up one day seeing an app that he was watching me throughout the house, throughout the day.
How many times were you beaten?
3. I'm running down a street, and for some reason I went up some stairs, and I flipped and I fell, and he got on top of me, and all I can remember is he was choking me. And I'm being thrown against a sofa and a lamp, and everything's just flying. All I keep remembering is my arms are fully straight, and I just keep kicking my legs out, like, just get off of me. And here's what's the craziest part, is I can't remember being hit. Like, I don't remember the pain of being hit. I just remember I just need to survive. Like, I just need to get home. I just want to get home. 3 months of him courting me, gifts, calls, beggings, forgiveness, give him a chance. He's broken. He'll never do it again. Every word that you can actually find that every woman has heard that has been beaten can be put on that list.
And you stayed.
And I thought he changed. Again, for the second time. I jump out of bed, and it's him chasing me all around the house, pushing and pulling and tugging and hitting me. And the only reason he stopped was because I stopped and I said my rosary. I stopped and I prayed my rosary. And he never touched me again.
Did you ever tell anyone what was happening to you?
So we only had a friend, a couple that were married, great Catholic couple, that knew about it. They were there at the first beating.
Did you ever tell family, friends,
No.
girlfriends? Never said anything about it?
No.
Did you ever consider calling the police?
I was ashamed. I didn't want to tell my girlfriends that our beautiful selves were amazingly unbroken and a piece of bunk. I didn't want to tell them this was fake, because behind the doors he's beating me. I didn't want to tell anybody that. I was fearful. I didn't want to report it. I didn't want the backlash of it. And I think a lot of that is why women don't report it. It's one, they feel like they have nowhere to go, and there's no one to help them because of the backlash that could happen, because of who that person is and who we're not, right? And then you're going to judge me. Everybody in America is about to judge me. Everybody in Houston's going to judge me. It takes a strong person to open up and to be allowed in to know that what's going on, because there's a whole lot of people out there, whether they're married or dating, that there's a lot of things going on behind those doors that none of us even know, that our best friends are dealing with. So when I went to the women's shelter, I went to group therapy first, and I closed my eyes and I listened to all their stories, And I could place myself in everyone's story, from the time that they were being hit, spoken to, pulled on, thrown around, and the words that were being spoken to them, I heard them. The only difference was the circumstances. That was it. What I learned about myself was I wasn't alone.
All right, so after watching the video, I want everyone to take a few minutes to write down any questions or thoughts about the video. All right, and then after we've already gone over some questions and thoughts about the video, we're going to go into important questions to ask during a counseling session with your clients. So the first question you would go into is, do you feel afraid of your partner much of the time? Do you avoid certain topics out of fear of angering your partner? Do you feel that you cannot do anything right for your partner? Do you believe that you deserve to be hurt or mistreated? Do you wonder if you are the one who is crazy? Do you feel emotionally numb or helpless? Does your partner humiliate or yell at you? Does your partner criticize you or put you down? Does your partner treat you so badly that you are embarrassed for your friends and family to see? Does your partner ignore or put down your opinions or accomplishments? Does your partner blame you for their own abusive behavior? Does your partner see you as property or a sex object rather than as a person? Does your partner have a bad or unpredictable temper? Does your partner hurt you or threaten to hurt you or kill you? Does your partner threaten to take your children away or harm themselves? Does your partner threaten to commit suicide if you leave? Does your partner force you to have sex? Does your partner destroy your belongings? Does your partner act excessively jealous and possessive? Does your partner control where you go or what you do? Does your partner keep you from seeing your friends or your family? Does your partner limit your access to money, the phone, or the car? Does your partner constantly check up on you? These are all important questions to ask your clients while counseling, because these will be the core to understanding your client's situation and what they are personally experiencing. So, it is still domestic abuse if the incidence of physical abuse seems minor. It is still domestic abuse if the incidents of physical abuse have only occurred 1 or 2 times in the relationship. It is still domestic abuse if the physical assaults stopped when you became passive. It is still domestic abuse if physical violence has not occurred. It is still domestic abuse if it is only emotional or verbal. The incidents that happen do not have to be major in order to be domestic abuse. The abuse does not have to be more than 1 or 2 times either. And abuse does not have to be simply physical or sexual. Verbal abuse can be extremely painful. The damaging effects from verbal abuse can be long-term. As with physical violence, verbal abuse can take many different forms, but the result was to change your view of yourself. It may have been designed to make you feel afraid or powerless. It may have focused on making you feel worthless and somehow to blame for what your abuser is doing to you. It may have also been intended to convince you that you were small, unattractive, stupid, insensitive, or unworthy. Verbal abuse can convince the victim that no one but the abuser will be able to love them, which corresponds to the emotional abuse. So why did the victim stay? Well, there are several different types of ways and reasons why the victim may stay in that relationship. You'll hear the question of, well, why did you stay? Why didn't you just leave them? Many victims find it hard to understand how hard it is to escape their abuser. Sometimes victims fall into the trap of believing that their partner will change. They fall into the trap of believing that their abuser's broken, unfulfilled promises are believable. Sometimes the victims may allow a problem to be the reason or the source of the abuse, to whether it's because the abuser is depressed, or maybe the abuse is suffered from the past or stress from work. Victims will justify the behavior, and it's really sad. Victims may even think if they help their abuser get the help that they need, that things will get better. So, traumatic bonding is a theory that tries to explain why abusive relationships create a powerful connection. Several factors have to be identified to create such a bond. Traumatic bonding is the first factor that contains an imbalance of power. An abusive partner will intimidate their victim by threatening and being violent in order to make them feel powerless. This proves that the power in the relationship is out of balance. The second factor is sporadic nature of the abusive behavior. This behavior involves feelings of denial by using a pattern of on again and off again. Cognitive dissonance uses denial and distancing to remove your thoughts and expectations regarding what is happening right now. It uses the sense of being powerless and unable to change a situation that the person uses as an internal and emotional strategy to make it less disappointing or painful. In other words, it is a survival technique to change how you perceive reality. The last factor is masking the abuse. This concept comes from the abuser does not allow the victim to admit the abuse to anyone, or where the victim experiences an escape through a variety of options such as alcohol or drugs. This factor is another way of denying the problem. The Stockholm Syndrome is a theory that was developed based off a case in Sweden in 1973, where some bank robbers had held a woman and 3 other hostages for 6 days. When the victims were finally released, the woman found herself developing a strong attachment and infatuation with her captor. This syndrome emerges in relationships where the victim clings to their abuser because that is their only hope for survival. This bond specifically is developed in a very unhealthy way. You don't see it quite often, but you see it enough where you can see that this syndrome and this bonding factor is very, very toxic. So when should a victim seek help? Well, a victim should seek professional help if they experience feelings or behavior that is preventing them from healing or improving their personal growth. There is no perfect time to seek help. The moment they begin to question whether they should seek help is honestly the moment that they should seek help immediately. Many victims resist the idea of psychotherapy because they believe only crazy people need counseling. However, psychotherapy offers help for all individuals based on psychological or emotional issues. Counseling is something you do for yourself. It is completely confidential. No one else ever needs to know what you said during the session with a counselor, or even that you're seeing anyone. You may feel uncomfortable and feel a little frightened to make the first appointment, but getting the help you need is an important step towards healing. Well, what about couples therapy? Perhaps you're working with a victim who suggests couples therapy. Couples therapy is not recommended when it involves domestic violence. In fact, couples therapy, sometimes referred as marriage counseling, is never recommended, and actually can be very dangerous for a couple when one is a controlling and abusive partner. Sitting next to the abuser and the victim often feels intimidated and afraid to be honest with the counselor about the real problems in the relationship. This could cause a serious lack of unawareness about the abuse to the therapist. Therefore, couples therapy can actually escalate the abuser's power and control and create conditions that result in more frequent and escalating abuse. Very specific treatment has been developed for these abusers. Bader's intervention groups are effective for abusers. These groups actually force abusers to examine their belief systems about their significant others and relationships, and to face head on their violent behavior as well as the roots of their violence. But for an abuser to simply begin in these intervention groups is not enough. An abuser must complete the entire treatment program. Even then, no one can guarantee that the abuse will not resurface, especially with the person who was target of the abuse. Even with the best treatment, your abuser may return to controlling and abusive or violent behaviors again. It will not necessarily stop them from being abusive. So how do we counsel our victims? Well, as counselors, we focus on using empathy and being understanding towards the victims. Counselors use active listening skills to gain knowledge of the victim's situation and help them through their situation. We use relational skills is a solution focus that will explore the client's experiences based on the present and past. This skill actually is very important because it is simply not about understanding the client's words or phrases, but the context of their experience and how it is implicated regarding their mental health. Clients grow from processing and understanding the difficulties known as the trauma of their home environment and the impact has had on them. Then from taking actions to relieve their symptoms. It is all part of the growing experience that we are as counselors can offer them as they develop skills to cope and better themselves. So this chart is a representation of framework for domestic violence counseling. These frameworks work together based on skills, knowledge, and characteristics while counseling clients. Each of these frameworks are important because they set the tone for the session with their client, and they correspond with how we counsel our clients. So each of these circles contain important characteristics and skills that we need to be using while counseling. We need to be confident, we need to be authentic, we need to be able to build trust and build hope. We need to be able to set boundaries and know when to access supervision. We need to be able to advance the empathy. We need to know how to work with clients who are struggling with their anxiety levels. And we need to be diligent about understanding different cultural beliefs and differences while working with clients. So there's a lot of benefits behind counseling. Counseling will help the victim set boundaries, increase awareness, promote healthy relationships, decrease their level of anxiety and stress, develop a resolution to their trauma, develop their self-confidence, and regain an emotional balance. All of these will benefit the client and encourage them throughout the rest of their lives. So as we go into the stages of counseling, there is the initial phase, the middle phase, and the termination phase. And these next few slides, we're going to really discuss on how those stages will look like for that client. So the beginning stage of counseling focuses on establishing the relationship, address the current issues, address responses appropriately regarding the client's disclosures of their experiences, and then the relationship will build and develop and increase in trust. So the beginning stages vary depending on the situation and the clients. Most of the time, clients are learning that they can trust their counselor and find that safety net while working with their counselor. Every client's gonna be different during that beginning stage because you don't know what has truly gone on in their life. So this is gonna be a new stage for every counselor and every client. So in the midst of these beginning stages, you might experience some challenges while counseling these victims. You might experience that there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of trust, there's a fear of embarrassment, a fear of alternative agenda. So the counselor must take the time while working with their client by understanding and valuing the individual and their situation. If a counselor minimizes the client's relationship difficulties and is not aware of potential risks and focus only on the client's responsibility and actions, that will cause several problems. This is where trust is important. Trust takes time to earn and develop. Trust is developed through the counselor's understanding and valuing the client and their situation. Failing to build trust in such a situation can result in early termination of a counseling session, which is something that we don't want to do with these victims. We really want to take the time to work with them and understand them and give them that safety net away from their home environment. Clients may have a lack of trust and an enhanced sense of wariness and may question the reasons for someone being helpful or pleasant to them, because they may honestly be so used to someone being so cruel to them that they don't know how to respond to someone who is being kind and listening and caring to them and nurturing. They may suspect that there is an alternative agenda. In these cases, it can be difficult for the person to share perceived shameful or embarrassing aspects of their abuse, as their experience may suggest that such disclosure will be used against them. The client may take up to several sessions to develop the level of trust and confidence in their counselor. And as the client's confidence in the client's confidence in their counselor continues to grow, they're going to notice a strong and a safe and contained therapeutic relationship that can be developed as they continue going through these sessions. So then we go into the middle stage of counseling. During the middle stage of counseling, clients will discover any trauma that they have experienced throughout their childhood or adulthood. Not every client will need to explore their past, but most clients will. Typically, this stage can range from 4 to 8 sessions over 2 to 3 months. It's truly debatable of how long it's going to be. However, some clients may experience 60 to 70 sessions over a 24-month period. And like I said, it could vary between clients in the situation. Clients may begin to consider the possibility of ending the counseling sessions because they feel more confident, positive about their own life again, which then they'll go into the ending stage of counseling. So the final stage allows clients to make decisions and feel comfortable with ending their counseling sessions. This is an important decision to make. The client will be able to take the elements that they have worked on during the sessions and take ownership over their life after experiencing a controlling relationship. So here we're going to go into a case study. We're going to watch this YouTube video of a woman who experienced domestic violence from a boyfriend. And I really want everyone to take notes to determine how they would work with this client and what would be the best solutions for counseling, and any other thoughts and ideas that they would suggest for this case study.
Don't ever let them tell you that you're worth nothing, that you have nowhere to go.
A young Indianapolis woman who says she was brutalized at the hands of her boyfriend is sharing her story tonight. She says the man she once considered her Prince Charming choked her, bit her, and beat her until she blacked out. Now, I want to warn you, the images you're about to see are disturbing, but as she lies in a hospital bed recovering from that brutal attack, she hopes her message will help others who may be suffering in silence. Eyewitness News reporter Emily Longnecker is at Eskenazi Hospital tonight with her story. Emily?
Well, John, Carly Hager's got a long road of healing in front of her. We spoke with her today here at Eskenazi Hospital after her family shared her story first on social media. They say they hope it will help other abuse victims, but a warning again, the pictures you are about to see, the words you are about to hear are disturbing.
He was Prince Charming. I fell in love with him instantly.
But 25-year-old Carly Hager says she never imagined her Prince Charming, the man she hoped to someday marry, would turn violent. But police say that's just what happened when Ryan Cameron attacked her last Saturday, among other things, nearly ripping out her tongue.
From here to here, the right side all the way, and it immediately started pouring blood, and I freaked out, was screaming even harder, and he tried to suffocate me with my own blood. He put his hand right here and plugged my nose, and I couldn't breathe.
Just hours earlier, says Carly, the couple had been celebrating at a wedding. Some of their friends had even come to the house afterwards and were there when Carly says Ryan started berating her.
Started calling me names like an F and B, C word. And then he proceeded to tell his friends that if they ever wanted to F me, here was their opportunity.
It wasn't the first time Carly says her boyfriend had verbally abused her or even hit her. She says she tried to stop the verbal attack by just going to bed. This time, though, that only made things worse.
He ran back to our room and locked our door and started to choke me in my sleep. His friends came back to our room, busted our door down, got him out.
Somehow, though, Carly says Ryan broke free from his friends, locked them out of the house, and came after her.
Came back to the bathroom where I was and told me to stop screaming, told me to shut up, and then proceeded to reach with his fingers and ripped my tongue halfway out.
After that, Carly says she blacked out. She remembers the police coming and them taking her out of the house. 3 days later, Carly's remembering more and realizing the brutality of her wounds.
He bit the tip of my ear off. He tried to bite my nose off. He tried to bite my fingers off. I had bite marks up and down my back, on my butt. He bit my neck.
Despite the trauma, the 25-year-old nursing assistant is speaking out about her attack and the slippery slope that abusive relationships can go down.
Don't ever let them tell you that you're worth nothing, that you have nowhere to go. Don't let them take your spirits away from you, tell you that you're not pretty, that you can't do anything, hang out with your friends, and you can't do anything in this world, because that's not a man, that's not somebody who loves you.
Ryan Cameron is behind bars tonight facing several charges, among them domestic battery and strangulation. Carly Hager told us she is not going to stop speaking out about her story. She hopes it will empower others to break free of an abusive relationship. We'll have Carly's full interview posted on WTHR.com. We thought it was an important enough story that you should hear the whole interview. Carly certainly wanted to be heard, and we wanted to give her that opportunity. John?
So after watching the case study video, we're going to go into discussing the types of counseling for the victims. After watching that case study, it is a very heartbreaking story, but I am encouraged by the situation that Carly experienced and seeing how she is speaking out about the domestic violence that she experienced. So there are a few different types of counseling therapies that we're going to discuss today in this presentation. We're going to talk about, the first one is going to be about cognitive behavioral therapy. This is one of the most popular therapies you're ever going to use in counseling. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also known as CBT. It is a short term of behavioral treatment to help people problem solve. CBT reveals that relationship between beliefs, thoughts, and feelings, as well as the behavior that follows. Through CBT, people learn that their perceptions directly influence how they respond to specific situations. In other words, a person's thoughts process informs their behaviors and actions. Although CBT is not a distinct treatment technique, CBT is also referred to a group of therapies such as rational, emotive behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy, and dialectic behavioral therapy. The way CBT works is grounding in the belief that how a person perceives events determines how they will act. It is not the events themselves that determine the person's actions or feelings. However, their negative thoughts may influence their focus. This puts a person at risk of being trapped in a vicious and continuous cycle of anxiety. CBT will help clients adjust their thoughts and restructure their cognitive mind. CBT will use techniques such as journaling, challenging beliefs, mindfulness, relaxation, as well as social, physical, and thinking exercise to help clients become aware of their emotional and behavioral pattern. CBT will also help clients attain safety while helping to reduce trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. So narrative therapy is a unique type of therapy. Narrative therapy is a form of counseling that views people as a separate from their problems. This allows clients to get some distance from the issue to see how it might actually be helping them or protecting them, more than it is hurting them. With this new perspective, individuals feel more empowered to make changes in their thought patterns and behavior, and rewrite their life story for a future that reflects who they are, what they're capable of, and what their purpose is, separate from their problems. As a client, they can expect that their counselor will encourage them to direct the conversation by asking what they prefer to talk about on an ongoing basis. The counselor will be observing whether the topic is most likely a problem and whether it is still something that the client is interested in discussing. After some time, the counselor will lead their client to tell other positive stories from their life to help them discover inherent traits and skills that they can use to address the client's problems. The goal is for the client to see how there are positive and productive ways to approach their life and their future when they stop identifying themselves by their problems. Narrative therapy focuses on an endless amount of possibilities that are waiting to be discovered. The goal of the counselor is not to be the expert, but to help their clients see that they are the experts regarding their own life and uncover their dreams, values, goals, and skills that define who they are separate from their problems. Interpersonal psychotherapy is also known as IBT. It is a time-limited, focused, and evidence-based approach to treat mood disorders. How this works with domestic violence victims is that it helps the victims manage unresolved grief and dealing with life transitions. This type of therapy helps clients improve and reduce their distress and resolve problems. This type of therapy will focus on the current situation rather than the past situation. It does not focus on internal conflicts, but the practice differs from cognitive and behavioral therapy approach because it addresses maladaptive thoughts and behaviors only as they apply to interpersonal relationships. IBT aims to change relationship patterns rather than the associated depressive symptoms, as well as target relationship difficulties that worsen these symptoms. So in group therapy, many group therapies will benefit the victims because they can share experiences with each other and listen to each other's stories as well as their feelings. Group therapy can provide a support system for victims and assist them to learn how to trust again. There are other options through group therapy, such as art and music therapy, and as well as animal assisted therapy, which will actually help the clients be able to trust again and develop relationships with animals. So as we wrap up, counseling clients and working with victims who have experienced a traumatic event is something that I am personally very passionate about. I hope that this presentation has been informative about how abuse can affect in a victim and how victims can receive the help that they need to take their life back. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.